Hi, my name is Ellen Glendinning, and the Morris Arboretum has asked me to demonstrate how I carve pumpkins. I have been carving pumpkins for over 35 years now, which makes me a master carver. I am most famous for the pumpkin show I used to organize at the Highlands Mansion. We would gather up a bunch of volunteers, spend an entire weekend carving, end up with 150 pumpkins that we would light up in the gardens, and over 1,000 people would come to see them. It was quite an event, and many people still have memories of it. I say memories because we haven't done it for the last 8 years. It came to an end, and since then I've been doing portrait work, where I will take a photograph of somebody and transfer it into a pattern and put it on a pumpkin. So if you want to see more of my work, go visit my website at sweetproductions.net. I'm going to start out by showing you how we scoop the pumpkin. Step number 1, if you take nothing else away from this video, please remember this. Cut your hole in the bottom. We cut the hole out here, scoop it from here, and that way we don't have to fuss with lining up the lid. We can place it right over our light source. Makes it a lot safer. You're not reaching way down into the pumpkin to try to light it or to try to get your candle to sit straight. I use these little tea lights. 3 of them will burn a pumpkin for about 3 hours. So step 1, carve from the bottom. Step 2, we're going to take our pattern, and I'll show you later where I get my tools and patterns. But we take our pattern, which is a flat piece of paper. We need to put some cuts into it to make it round so it fits over the pumpkin. It's kind of like a dart in a dress. You overlap them a little bit so they fit. This one, again, scoop from the bottom. That one is ready to poke. This one I've already poked. Poking is how we transfer the pattern to the pumpkin. I've got the pattern taped on, and I have a tool, and I go around poking all these holes around the outlines. This pattern is actually numbered to tell me which ones to cut first. Very few patterns are like that. You'll see if I remove the pattern, kind of hard to see them, but the holes are there. That's how you know where to cut. This one was all poked, you can see, completely poked, and I've cut it. I don't punch out the holes, punch out the pieces until I'm finished the whole thing, and there's a reason for that, which I'll tell you about in a few minutes. But again, carving from the bottom, and you're going to push your pieces out from the inside out. Often you don't realize it, but you're cutting on a little bit of an angle, and if you try to push your pieces in, it could break the pumpkin. So that is ready to carve. Now, we are going to carve a pumpkin for the Arboretum, and I'll tell you a little bit about how to choose your pumpkin. A lot of people think they need the biggest pumpkin in the patch. Don't do that. That's going to be really thick, really hard to scoop, and heavy, just especially if you're carving with kids, you're going to lose their attention just after scooping. So I look for a longer, taller pumpkin. I look for a smooth skin. If it's got some dirt or blemishes, that's okay. That can probably go on the back. Okay, see, this is all scraped up. I don't care, that's the back. My design's going here. Another thing I like to point out to people, some pumpkins have a really cool stem. You could turn that into a nose, put some eyes here, and a cool mouth. If that was the case, you wouldn't put your hole in the bottom, you'd put your hole on whatever side is going to be down, because otherwise the light will just pour out the back side of your pumpkin, and that won't work, and you won't have anywhere to put your candle. So again, get creative. Sometimes funky shapes can make funky pumpkins. I do a lot of portrait work where I'll take a photograph of somebody and transfer it into a pattern and put it onto the pumpkin. For that, I really need a smooth surface. Time to scoop. Again, we're going to cut the hole in the bottom. Do not use a kitchen knife. If you must use a kitchen knife, make it a serrated one so it's not as dangerous. A sharp kitchen knife is not what you want when you're carving a pumpkin. So I'm going to try not to cut my wire. Now, like I mentioned before, we don't need this anymore because we don't need a top. The tool I use for scooping, you get in the kits that you can buy at Michael's with the tools. All right. This wire's kind of getting in the way. Now it's messy in there, and if I start taking small scoops out, it's going to be a real mess. So I just accept the fact that I'm going to get slimy and gross and just reach in there and dig away as much as I can in the first step. The more you can scrape off the sides and just let it pile up in there, and you can sort of feel what's going on. Oh, the seeds. A lot of people like to roast the seeds, and this is the time that you're going to separate them out. To roast them, I clean them first in a colander, and then let them sit overnight to dry out. Then I'll coat them in some melted butter, and I bake them at a low heat, around 250, 300, for 15 minutes before I flip them. And to get them nice and brown, I turn it up a little bit at the end, but I put a lot of salt on them and they're delicious. Okay, almost ready for the first dump. See, I haven't pulled it out. I haven't made a mess yet. And now it's very satisfying when you can just get it all out in one glump. It's mostly empty. Now I'm going to just go around again. The thinner you get the walls of the pumpkin, the easier it is to carve. It's funny, people look at my bucket and they say, oh boy, we can make pumpkin pie. Not from that. Pumpkin pie is actually made from this part of the pumpkin. And you can make the puree. You can take your pieces and boil them and get the puree from that. But the goop is not going to make a good pie. Oh, I missed. At least it's not my kitchen floor. Okay, last step is just decide where your pattern is going to go. I'm going to be carving on this side, so I'm just going to make that extra thin, just there. A little dirty on the back, doesn't matter, it's the back. All right, this is the pattern I've chosen to do today for the Arboretum. I want to get rid of the extra white, don't need that. Now remember what I said about having to fit a flat piece of paper on a round pumpkin. We're going to need to cut it in a few places. I don't know if that's the best place, but I'm just cutting it so that I can make it fit. Got my masking tape. The little things you just learn over the years of doing this over and over. When we would do our show, it was really nice, I'll give credit, I won't say names, but we had a scooper. A person who did nothing but scoop the pumpkins. The nicest thing to be able to arrive in the morning, have a pumpkin right there, ready and waiting, already scooped. Saved me a lot of time. Okay, so I have to overlap them a little bit, but I'll be able to figure that out when I'm poking. It won't get messed up. There we are, we're ready to go poke. I'll talk to you a little bit about my tools. These you can buy, a lot of supermarkets sell them, Michael's for sure. And they have pretty much everything you need except for the knife to cut the bottom out. I would use a serrated kitchen knife if you don't have one of these small ones. This was a specialty knife. So every good carver needs a scooper, a bottom cutter, scissors to cut your pattern, tape to tape it on. Next, we're going to poke our holes. The kits sometimes come with a poker like this. This is what I prefer. If you recognize it, it's a corn on the cob holder. And I've cut one of the nails out. So it's always sharp. It's a nail with a handle. This is just a piece of plastic that gets dull pretty quick. So I use my corn poker. This is my favorite knife. They're little coping saws. Be careful when you buy these knives. There are knockoffs out there that have really big, fat, clunky handles. Very hard to use. And they won't last as long, and they will make it more difficult to carve. So these are just assorted sizes. These are called drills. This I can make a perfect hole in a pumpkin with, something I could never do with a knife. You just spin it, and you have 3 different sizes. These are the tools I use when I'm shading. When I'm doing my portrait work, I use a lot of X-Acto tools. And I'll do a little bit of shading on this, but generally I'm cutting today. If you cut the wrong thing, we can do surgery with a pin. You can pin it back in place in most cases. This is magic powder. I'll explain that to you in a few minutes. So that's it for those tools. So on this pattern, everything that's white, I'm going to cut out. Anything that's gray, I'm going to simply peel the skin off so that we have 3 tones. We have black, white, and gray. The skin in place will show up as black. The pieces cut out will show up as white, and the pieces here that are peeled will come out as gray. I need to mark on the pumpkin skin, though, where to cut and where to peel, and I do that with my corn on the cob holder. You don't have to poke too hard. Some people go ram, ram, ram. Just softly poking through. You're just simply trying to get a hole to go through the paper into the pumpkin, not too deep. You don't have to space them too close together unless your pattern is intricate, then that'll help you when you take the paper off the pumpkin. The idea is to be able to see where to cut, obviously. And my style is to poke what I'm going to cut, and then I do a different way to mark the peeling, and I'll show you that in a minute. Finished poking all the white spots, and the way I'm going to mark the shaded spots is by actually cutting through the paper. And I'm just going to do a single line where I know I need to peel. Okay, so you'll see I turn the pumpkin as I go. Sometimes it's easier than turning the tool. Move it down the middle. I should have done this one first. Uh-oh. All right, now it moved on me. That was a mistake. I'm going to have to improvise this one, I think. Now look what I've done to my pattern. It's in pieces. But important to do is keep your pattern. After you've poked, you're going to take it off your pumpkin and keep it for reference, because this one is kind of easy, but sometimes you need others that you can follow along so you see what you're doing. Off the pattern now, here are my holes. They're a little bit hard to see. So that's where the magic powder comes in handy. Take a little handful, rub it on the face of the pumpkin. Now, look at that.
What is the magic powder, though?
What is the magic powder? When I do this in classes, I teach kids a lot how to carve, and they love the magic powder, and I don't want to tell them what it is, but it's flour. All right, ready to carve. I got my knife. I'm going to hold it sort of like a pencil, and I'm going to put it in, and I'm just going to go up and down, up and down. It's a saw, and you're just going to follow your dots. You're connecting the dots with your saw. And I want to make sure that I'm not cutting more than I should, so I keep referring to my pattern. When I need to turn a corner, I take the saw out and turn the saw. I don't try to turn it in the pumpkin because that will break your tool. I am left-handed, so I work, let's see, where does this one go? I work from right to left because I don't want to put my hand on where I've cut. I need to keep that nice and sturdy. When you have a pattern that has a lot of small pieces, you should cut the small pieces first. Save the big pieces for last. So this, I'm just going to go around and do all 4 corners of my pattern. Now, people often want to pull their pieces out as they cut, but I like to leave them in. It helps me, one, watch my progress, and it also keeps the pumpkin sturdy. If I start sawing and pieces are missing, it's going to weaken the pumpkin, and I could risk wrecking it. Okay, so that's one corner done. Do that 3 more times. And as I said before, I'm not going to pop these pieces out yet because I want them to maintain the integrity of the pumpkin. Ready to do a little peeling. You can kind of see the lines that I made. I pretty much know what I need to do, and it's a big circle. So I have this V-shaped X-Acto tool. It just gouges out right along the line I made. It's really just outlining the logo. Okay, so I've done some peeling around the outside and in the middle. I'm ready to poke my pieces out, but before I do that, I'm going to go one more time with the scraper, holding my hand over my pattern, keeping the pieces in place. I'm just thinning this wall one more time, and it'll be a cleaner look when I'm done. And I also need to get this area thin because this peeled part, we need to allow light to shine through that, so we want it to be as thin as we can get it. It's kind of cool when you can see your pattern on the inside. We're ready to pop our pieces out, and I'm actually going to push them out from the inside because, again, if I push them from the outside, they might be at the wrong angle and they might break my work. Here they go. 1, 2, 3. Looks nice and clean. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And I'm just cleaning it up a little bit with my fingers, but it's nice and clean because we just scraped it some more. Just clean that up. Okay, we are ready. Oh, let me dump this. We're ready to light it. And open them.
So beautiful.
Yay! And there you have it. And remember, if you want to see more of my work, you can visit sweetproductions.net. Thank you.